Welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies and characters that make us feel seen. We are going beyond the reef with my co-host today, writer, producer, and director Dana Ledoux Miller. Dana has written on shows like Netflix's Narcos and ABC's Designated Survivor. She also co-wrote and co-created Netflix's Thai Cave Rescue limited series, produced by John M. Chu. Most recently, Dana is co-writer and co-director of one of the biggest films of the year. That's Moana 2. It is in theaters now, and it probably will be for a good time to come, especially considering how quickly movies can arrive and leave the theater these days. It's going to stick around for a while because it's so phenomenally successful. Let's get to the meat of it. We have a great conversation with Dana lined up for you, recorded less than a week after the premiere of Moana 2, so it's all fresh in her mind. Here goes that conversation. Dana Ledoux Miller, congratulations on the record-setting opening.
Thank you. And wait, to be clear, it was not 5 minutes. It was 5 days.
It was 5 days to become the biggest Thanksgiving weekend opening ever and one of already the top 10 most successful box office films of the year. How's that going?
You know, it is a very surreal thing to have a movie do really well. I mean, you read my resume. I've been working in TV for a long time, and sometimes you make something and people watch it, and sometimes you make something and nobody watches it. You kind of never know exactly what's going to happen. And so to have this film blow up so quickly is kind of an out-of-body experience, especially because, you know, we were working on it so intensely. Like, we only finished the film. I think we officially wrapped, like, picture October 16th. The movie came out November 27th. So
oh my God.
It was like it was wild. And it all, like, everything just started snowballing and happening. And so then all of a sudden you finish something and then people are watching it. It's hard to process, but
that's nuts.
I'm so grateful that people are watching it. You know, the feedback is from the audiences has been really positive and exciting, and you know, it's amazing that people are coming to the theaters. I'm someone who loves going to the movies and experiencing a film in theaters, and the fact that it was such a big weekend and people were coming out in droves, not just to watch our film, but to watch other films. That's exciting.
It was an incredible Thanksgiving weekend. And how it, like, having done so much work in television for so long, what is the difference in, especially like the treat of having a theatrical release, let alone like a Disney-sized, Moana-sized theatrical release, like a rare thing in this day and age? Like, what is the difference between watching your work come into the world from a television working perspective to where, like, TV is very de rigueur? Like, we love TV now. The people are watching TV, and movies are having a harder go of it, like in a theatrical landscape. What is the sort of difference in watching something come out into the world between those two mediums?
You know, I think that there's this like instant immediacy in what's happened over the last 5 days. You know, like a Disney global rollout where we were literally doing press around the world and had, I think it was like 5 premieres around the world.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been involved with anything on this scale ever. And I think that's something that a feature film can do in a way that even, you know, maybe a Game of Thrones size show might be able to do. But even then, you know, it's not the marketing campaign alone of just watching what our teams around the world were doing. Like, there were, you know, there's train wraps all over Italy. They put a, you know, they sailed a canoe through the rocks of Capri in Italy. There's like things in all around the world that I'm like, wait. We're just over here in Burbank and Vancouver making something. And now all of you are like in Paris, you know, like in London, we did a dinner cruise on the Thames, and then they did a drone show of like Moana and Maui and the Hook and everything above the Thames in the middle of the night. It's like, what? I just went to film school and I was like, I hope one person watches my short film.
Wow.
And now it's like, you know, I have people coming up to me and saying, you know, I saw what you did 2 times already. I'm like, the movie was out. It just came out. Like, it's shown 2 times.
You're like, it came out on a holiday weekend that is allegedly about like eating dinner with your family. And they're like, I've seen your movie twice.
It's, it kind of exceeds what I ever imagined for myself as a filmmaker. Like I was like, my dream is to make an indie that's so weird nobody wants to watch it. And then I, I found the joy in entertaining. And I think that was a journey for me. It's taken me a long time to understand that it's okay to just make something that people enjoy watching. and, and it's been really cool to see, especially this film. I'm Samoan, I'm a Pacific Islander. And so to see the impact specifically in 5 days that it's had on the Pacific Islander community has been beyond my expectations. I think I was a little nervous because we did take a lot of care to get a lot of it right, but you just kind of never know how people are going to react and what they're going to think. And I was like, I really want to make my family proud. I really want to make the people who will see themselves in this proud. And so to find out, I mean, I was just getting a text a few minutes ago, like it's sold out in American Samoa. It's like there's a friend texted me from Apia in Samoa and said the lines are just down the street. And like people are excited to see it because they see themselves. Like that is what representation, the importance of representation. And so it's been a real honor and a privilege, I would say, to get to make this.
I don't know what like the maelstrom of things that is going on in my head right now, but I'm definitely crying. And that's just so, it's just so wonderful to hear. Like,
awesome.
God, wow. And like, it's, I feel like it comes with like that caveat of like, it is such a sensation and it's such a touch point because it is one of a rare collection of touch points at this kind of scale. I mean, an unprecedented kind of touch point for members of your community. And Auli'i Carvalho, as we mentioned a bit before we started recording, she came on, it was a wonderful conversation, and it's one of our most popular
episodes.
Only
because she's wonderful.
She was so, it was like at one point she was like, I just don't know. Like, I don't know what's going on. I was like, you know what? You are young. You have you are figure. And it was just like someone like 16 years older than her being like, you are right on time. You are not supposed to have it figured out. But they talked about she loves animation because there was so much more room for painting herself onto something with imagination in something that was already not of the real corporeal world, because there needed to be room for that inventiveness because she didn't have direct representation handed to her. And so I wanted to talk to you about both.
She's so wise.
She was such a wise a wise, wonderful young person. And so I wanted to hear from you about both of those elements, like working in animation from that standpoint and the reach that can have and the sort of broad quadrant appeal that can have when it's so hard to find those mass appeal movies anymore. Even movies with capes and spandex are not hitting like they used to in terms of like the draw at the theater. So, having that iconic figure in Moana for you to shepherd, and then also working in animation where it is a boundless space where you can make anything you want out of it.
I know when I was asked, like, what character should you choose? I was like, I feel a little embarrassed, but I have to pick Moana because she really changed my life. Like I can pinpoint the moment that Moana changed my life. And I actually texted Auli'i right before the movie came out. And I knew that there's a lot that was going to be going on. And I said that. I was like, you were so young, and yet the work you did, the film you made, I was in my mid-30s, and you changed the course of my life forever. I was in Orange County, California. I want to say I was right there. I was like going to the movies. I'd heard about Moana. I didn't really know anything about it at the time. I was like in the middle of Designated Survivor season 1. I was like 6 months pregnant with my first kid.
Wow.
And went to the movies and didn't really know what to expect. Lights go down. It like the music hits, and then they're singing in Samoan. And I just started crying.
Oh,
I was like, I don't know what this movie's about, but I'm crying. Because to me, it was like one of those pivotal moments I will always look back to and go, oh, that changed my life. And I don't feel like I'm someone that has a lot of clarity in the moment about like what this moment, the impact something is having. I'm more of like a reflective person. But I did, this is one of those times I was like, holy crap. The movie keeps going and it just keeps building. And then there's these brown people that look like my brown people and are talking like my family. And like it hit so hard for a couple of reasons. And one of those reasons was um I'd never heard I had never heard someone or seen people like this on a scale this big. Like I was familiar with, indigenous films from the Pacific, but they Disney animation has a reach that nobody else has.
literally nothing.
Like nobody.
Yeah.
Like they play everywhere around the world. They reach, like you said, it's like a 4 quadrant. Everyone's watching these movies. And I was like, oh my God, like this movie just existing will forever change the way Pacific Islanders are perceived around the world. It's going to create understanding about who I am, who my family is in a way that never existed before, in a way that I don't think that there's anything else that could have done it because, we're known in the cultural eye as at that point as very specific things. I mean, we had Dwayne Johnson, we had Jason Momoa, they're movie stars, but play a very specific role within that. And then we're known for our athleticism. We have football players and that's kind of or we're the butt of a joke. We're the stereotypical like security guard or the clown, but we're never the heroes. We're never women really had never been seen in a dynamic role as Pacific Islanders. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like we get to change the way people like this movie is going to change the way people see us. So I knew that. And I also knew that as a writer, it was going to change the way I was able to walk into a room and talk about myself and what was important to me. Like I knew in that moment that I would be able to pitch stories that I wasn't able to pitch before because I could go, oh, you don't understand what I'm talking about? Moana.
You don't know if there's an audience. You're thinking who's the audience for that? Moana.
Yeah.
Like
you don't know if there's talent for that? Ali Carvalho.
Yeah.
Like you don't, it just.
Who's this going to reach? Listen to every child singing How Far I'll Go. Like.
Exactly. I don't understand what's so beautiful about this place. Honestly, I can point you to an animated film that is capturing so much of the beauty of what this place is. Like it was game changing. But I will say like that was 2016 and I couldn't have anticipated being a part of telling Moana's story at that moment. I was like, I'll be happy if somebody if like my agency is like, oh, now we understand who you are. Yeah. Like that would be enough for me at that moment.
Yeah.
To be a part of it now and to be involved in making the creative decisions that continue her story. It's like, I can't believe how far I've come.
If the wind in my sail on the sea stays behind me, one day I'll know how far I'll go.
No, I every once in a while, like one of my most like recurringly searched videos is just Ali singing at the Oscars the year that song was nominated, watching a teenager deliver that with the poise and the pipe. Like it's just, and so you're watching that and it's having this immediate, like, what does that do for you as somebody who has already worked in storytelling and somebody who's going to continue working in storytelling? How does that move your own personal bar inside for what you allow yourself to consider writing, like putting your specs together, putting samples together, like writing on the independent development time that folks in the industry do to like get their work on page to be like, this is what I want to sell because this is who I am.
Yeah. I mean, I would say I've always been really drawn to stories about kind of as a mixed person. Like I've been drawn to stories about people who are sort of living inside and outside of community who can't find their place. And so before Moana, I had been really reticent to write specifically about Pacific Islander experience of that. And so I had written stories that were kind of adjacent to that in a lot of ways. And I think after Moana, and everyone's talking about it, I started to gain a little bit more confidence in kind of veering towards a more Pacific Islander focused story. I think I'm really glad that I didn't come up telling specifically Pacific Islander stories, because I don't know that I'd be where I am today if I had written a TV show right away that had been that, because I think I would have been pigeonholed in that. And like that, I would have been a Pacific Islander writer,
Right.
and not just a writer, because that's how the business works. And so I think because I had this very specific experience of writing on shows that had nothing to do specifically with being a Pacific Islander, it kind of allowed me to get ahead to a point that by the time I was ready to start delving into this world and these ideas, I'd kind of already established myself as being able to write different things. And I think there's this tendency that when you come from sort of a marginalized group or a group that doesn't have a lot of representation, and you enter Hollywood,
that is defined as non-normative against whiteness. Like whiteness as normative,
exactly.
You are non-normative against whiteness.
Yes. Thank you. If you do that, then the expectation is that that's the kind of storytelling that you have to tell. And I think I hope that in a lot of ways that my path can prove out that we are just as worthy as as writing a designated survivor as we are writing a story about our people, our communities. And because I think that kind of breaks that stereotype that we should be marginalized to the stories that are appropriately culturally for who we are and where we come from. It's been a long path but I did eventually, after Moana, get the opportunity to start to meet other people that were sort of working in the API space, that were interested in creating space for Pacific Islanders to tell stories. And one group in particular called Break the Room, we partnered and created a Pacific Islander writers room, funded, where we broke a show for Quibi, and we partnered with Paul Feig's company, Powder Keg, and $7, Dwayne's company. And so that was illuminating, incredible experience. We had a 1-week writers room in Hawaii with all Pacific Islander writers from different places. And I was like, it was like Moana to that. I was like, oh my gosh, it's all proving true. Like, we are capable of doing this. Incredible talent that's all gone on. Everyone in that room has gone on now to write professionally. R.I.P. Quibi.
Yeah, absolutely. All those quick bites, ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Yeah. But I don't know that a room like that would have happened before Moana. I mean,
yeah,
it allowed us to be a little bit bolder. And I think there is an emergence of filmmakers out of Hawaii right now, like Kanaka Maoli filmmakers that are really making big strides. And Sundance has played a big role in that, their Indigenous program. So support is coming. I think it's just, we come from communities that don't have a history of being filmmakers. So we don't have a pipeline. We don't have traditional opportunities. We don't often know someone who has done it. And so by not knowing anyone, like, we can't call up our auntie and be like, hey, can you give me some advice about going to film school? Because we hadn't really done that. And so it's kind of like a bunch of things are all kind of reaching critical mass at the same time, allowing us to like have a broader reach, which makes me so excited that Moana 2 is kind of coming out at this moment, because there are more writers, there are more directors, there are more actors that have gotten work in the last even 5 years from our community. And so it feels like, okay, we're re-announcing ourselves on a global stage. And we actually have started to build an infrastructure that can support being able to go into, your agents, going into a production company to say, I want to tell this story about Pacific Islanders. And you want to know the question's always like, well, who's going to be in it? Yeah. Well, let me tell you, Luciani Buchanan was just on 2 seasons of The Night Agent on Netflix, hit show. These people are doing all of these things. You can't use your traditional excuses against us anymore, because we have used the system. Like, we figured out the system and now we're building it together. And so it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a Pacific Islander.
We will be right back with more Dana Ledoux Miller with more on Moana 2 and Pacific Island horror in podcast form? I don't know. I'm wish casting at this point. Then, at the end, I will have one quick thing before I go about the scale opposite of Moana 2, which is the Sundance Film Festival. The program just dropped, and I just want to shout out some titles I'm really excited about because we say support independent cinema here on the Feeling Seen podcast, and that is the definition of supporting independent cinema, so stick around for that.
All right, we're over 70 episodes into our show. Let's learn everything. So let's do a quick progress check. Have we learned about quantum physics?
Yes, episode 59.
We haven't learned about the history of gossip yet, have we?
Yes, we have. Same episode, actually.
Have we talked to Tom Scott about his love of roller coasters?
Episode 64.
So how close are we to learning everything?
Bad news. We still haven't learned everything yet.
We're ruined!
No, it's good news as well. There is still a lot to learn.
Woo!
I'm Dr. Ella Hubber.
I'm regular Tom Lum.
I'm Caroline Roper, and on Let's Learn Everything, we learn about science and a bit of everything else too.
And although we haven't learned everything yet, I've got a pretty good feeling about this next episode.
Join us every other Thursday on Maximum Fun.
People say not to judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree.
Which is why here on Just the Zoo of Us, we judge them by so much more.
We rate animals out of 10 in the categories of effectiveness, ingenuity, and aesthetics, taking into consideration each animal's true strengths, like a pigeon's ability to tell a Monet from a Picasso, or a polar bear's ability to play basketball.
Guest experts like biologists, ecologists, and more join us to share their unique insight into the animal's world.
Listen with friends and family of all ages on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get podcasts.
What are the first day jitters like of coming in to start Moana 2? There's the scale of it, of course, but then thinking of first days at other jobs. What was first day on Moana 2 like compared to other jobs that weren't attached to a moment of clarity, life pivot experience that you had watching the first one?
I'm really grateful for a couple of things. One, that it was kind of a slow roll for me into it. And two, that I was so freaking naive about what it takes to make an animated film because I had literally never worked in animation a day in my life. Thankfully, in a lot of ways, I started on the live action Moana with Jared Bush. We co-wrote that together. And that was my first Moana project. And so it was because of that, how great that working relationship was, that he executive produced and co-wrote Moana 2. So he was like, hey, we're doing Moana 2. It feels like the natural progression for you to come jump on that. A Hawaiian writer, Bryson Chun, had just come in after Beck Smith had just left because, the animation takes so long and you're doing development for so long that there's so much turnover. And so I'd come in to help kind of crack the code with them. But at that point, it was still a TV series. And it wasn't until late summer that Jared and I started having conversations about the realities of what this could be like as a film. And so I would say the nerves, if you could call it that, or just like the enormity of the project kind of hit once we started to think about it as a feature, because that a feature just meant a different scope, a different scale, different expectations. I think the expectations for a Disney Plus series are inherently different than the expectations for a global rollout of a feature film. And so what the saving grace, I would say, for me was that when I write, I'm a very character first writer. It's always hard for me to explain. It's not that I'm discounting the plot, but I'm trying to work through the plot through the character lens. That makes sense.
No, I feel like that's like, are you if you're a musician, it's like, do you work from lyrics first or do you work from music first? Yeah, whatever gets you there.
It's like that. And so I think I was just so focused on Moana and what crafting an adventure worthy of her next installment felt like that I was able to kind of drown out the noise and the expectation. I think also the naivete of all of that too, really, like, how big it was going to be really helped. People would tell me things. They're like, you don't understand when this movie comes out or when we get close to the press and all this. I was like, let's focus. We're inside this one building in Burbank and we had a team in
All roads
Vancouver.
lead to Burbank.
Yeah, I was like, we're just like on the Zooms with Vancouver. We're in Burbank. Like none of the outside really made any sense to me. I mean, I wasn't listening to it. And so I was like very, a few months out of finishing the film, and we start getting the stats for how well Moana 1 is doing on streaming. It was like the most streamed film in the last 5 years. Or like, it's the numbers for how often that movie is still watched today are insane. And I think if we had any understanding of that when we were first trying to make this, that might have gotten into our heads a little bit. But thankfully, we were just story focused, and we were getting the movie done focused. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that, because now we can look back and go, oh, that was pretty cool. Everything happening is cool, but we weren't obsessed with the noise, or at least I wasn't.
Something that you brought up that I think is one of that I bring up so often is just one of my favorite parts of having these conversations on the show is like when you said, like, I felt like kind of weird being like, I'm gonna say Moana, like that I like you said, I felt embarrassed. And I think like the most compelling people to me to invite on the show are the ones who I'm wondering, like, gosh, I wonder where this answer is going to land, because it doesn't seem like an easily available one. And for folks who are defined against a broader norm of whatever it is, being cisgendered or being white or being straight, what have you, it is my firmly held belief that there is a kind of creative genius that has to germinate within othered communities, because we are not in so like I'm gay, and like I've got a lot going on that's easy over here, but I'm a gay American, so that's my lane. And we have to find ways to put ourselves in places where we're told we're not supposed to be outright, or people just don't even try. And so it's like, well, nobody disinvited me. I just am not real to so many of these contexts. So I think that, like, what you were saying about you, like, there was a mental hurdle around, like, writing Pacific Islander stories when you're starting out, because you do get pigeonholed in this industry. You're a horror director. You're a horror actor. Like, and that's the kind of the silos that people get put into. But what that means is, like, people like, oh, I can write a designated survivor. Like, I can write a Kevin can go fuck himself. And there is such an understanding.
I really appreciate, by the way, that you say it the full title every time. Thank you.
I just like I'm
as
not
it should be done.
F himself just feels like I'm not NBC. Like, I don't have to worry about that. But and I know this is all rambling at this point, but I feel that the kind of chops that you have to develop in order to thrive, not just like survive, but thrive in the context of extremely normative places where people cannot imagine individuals unlike themselves arriving en masse to be their, like, numerical equal, even in a room, means that folks become more skilled at writing, I think, like, white folks or straight folks who do, and they don't belong to those categories, than sometimes even the folks in them. Because you've lived a life of observation and chameleonic awareness of adapting to every situation in a way that if you just show up and look like the passkey, you don't have to think so much about your presentation when you go someplace. And I think it's a fascinating skill set.
I love that.
I think it's a fascinating skill set to develop.
I think it's true. And I think I was super fortunate in that I had half the passkey, and that I am so white presented. Like, I don't take for granted that I got into rooms very early that some of my cousins I don't think could have gotten into. It's part of the reason why I feel such a strong responsibility to make sure that the door stays open for everyone that comes after me, because I know that it's not as easy to get into those spaces if you don't look like me. And I hate that. I think that's ridiculous, but it's the reality. And so it's why I've been working really hard in the last couple of years to try to make sure that the door stays open, but also equip people who want to do this with the skill sets that they need in order to go through that door with confidence and stay there and keep pushing forward. Because the more of us there are working and continuing to work, the easier it's going to get for the people that come behind us, so that we don't just have to be observers. We get to be anywhere we want to be.
Did you see yourself, or did you aspire toward, hope for, muse upon, like being somebody who would help facilitate the either construction or support of that architecture for others early in your career? Or is that something that only like became a part of the thought process? Like, was that like, I got something else I can do here?
I wanted someone to do that for me.
Right.
I was looking around like, where's the support? Please help me.
Yeah. That meme of like the hand coming out of the water and someone just high fives it right before it sinks down.
You know, there are some really incredible organizations that work. They're AAPI organizations, and I'm really fortunate that like groups like CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment, were really supportive of me. But the designation of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders together is a political move. It's a much bigger story, but that means that it encompasses such a massive group of people. And so it's hard to support everyone within that community. And I think I just kept hoping that honestly, that I would meet another Pacific Islander. Like I just didn't know anybody out here in LA or that was working, like I was fortunate enough to keep working and keep moving up. But then it was like, I was the only Pacific Islander I was meeting moving in those spaces. And so I wanted community in that way. And I kept waiting for it. And the more I was working and the more I was meeting young writers, I started doing I was asked to do some programs in Hawaii that were trying to help writers. And so I started doing that kind of casually. And I was like, these people are so talented. How do they get in? I don't know how to help you. I'm sorry. I'm like, I'm still trying to get a general meeting here and there, I don't know how to get you one.
Yeah. When I figure this out, I will come back here.
Yeah. And so it kind of just like came together. I was actually a friend of mine had made a film. It was like the first Hawaiian made feature film to screen at Sundance. And so there was a panel and they had asked me to be on it. It was a Zoom panel. And this guy like hit me up in the chat, Christian Fanene Schmidt. And he was like, we just started chatting. I'd seen him on Instagram, actually. We started talking and we had this like sort of similar sense that we needed community, but it didn't exist. And so he's very bold, much bolder than I am, and was like, why don't we do something like that? And so we talked to Cabe and we're like, you do amazing work. Can we come alongside you and create a Pacific Islander community that's emulating what you're doing? Not because we don't think you're doing amazing work, but because it's too much for you to it's too much for anyone.
Yeah.
And they wwere so supportive and have been our biggest advocates and champions. And so we're 2.5 years in now. And we had Netflix sponsor a writing fellowship. We had the Asian American Foundation sponsor a producing fellowship. We've had events with Outli'i. We've had just like really made incredible progress. And I think not only have we're starting to build the foundation of like getting people opportunities, but I have found my people. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, you've been writing on Nickelodeon for 20 years. I couldn't find you. I didn't know you were there. Or like, you've been an actor, or you've been making commercials over here, or you're a photographer. It's like, oh, we were always here. We just didn't know how to connect. And so to see people supporting each other, now I see people like, helping make each other short films or like casting each other in projects that they have. And it's like, oh, I had no plan for this in my life. Even now I'm still like, does somebody want to take over? Like, does somebody want this?
Yeah.
No, but I'm so proud of that work, because sometimes it just takes someone saying, yes, I'll try. We still have no idea what we're doing. We're still making it up as we go along, but we had no idea how much work it would be or how infuriating it could be sometimes when people just like don't understand your inherent value as a human being. And so it's been really tough, but I sometimes look back and go, oh, if we hadn't taken that chance and just said, okay, fine, I'll do it, there wouldn't be this community today. And there wouldn't be this incredibly talented West Hollywood Pacific Islander dodgeball team. So that's our real win.
You're like,
really.
you know how I said that we are a community heralded for sports and our athletic prowess? Fucking bring it on. Bring it on.
But if I can even say, like, we had a like a guild screening this past weekend, and it was like all guilds invited. And afterwards, this young person came up to me and started crying, and I was like really moved by the film. And I was talking to them, and like I'm half Hawaiian. I've never been to Hawaii, and seeing this and hearing you all talk, it just means so much to me. I don't know, like, basically, like, I don't know anyone in the community, and I got to say, hey, are you a filmmaker? Yes. Look, we have this group. We're called Peak. We're online. We're all over the place. We have these events. Come. There's a place for you to come find others like you. And there's so many people just like you who also feel like they're not enough, or, not Pacific Islander enough, or still trying to figure out their identity. I'm like, come. I'm like, that's a huge win, just to be able to say, come to an event. You're not alone. Like, that's the dream.
As somebody who was like, I was waiting for somebody to help me. Like, I was waiting for somebody to put a hand out and be like, hey, I know something about this. And now, like, for you to, like, literally and directly have somebody ask the same question that you were asking to the universe, except they have a person they could ask, and you could answer it with something. Like, what an arc.
Yeah, that, putting it that way, like, that just gave me some good feelings.
I hope so. I hope so.
We have so much to offer, we're a community that contains multitudes, and we're not a monolith. We have so much joy, but also so much depth, and honestly, so much trauma to explore. Like, you want some drama? Tell a Pacific Islander story. Like, we got a lot.
No, you saying, like, that there's not, like, a hub, like, pipeline development, like, within Hawaii, and I suddenly was like, horror is really my area of passion, horror and action, and to, like, consider, like, all the, like, Pacific Islander horror movies that we have not been granted.
I'll tell you, my writer's assistant on my Netflix series, Thai Cave Rescue, is someone, and he wrote a pretty killer horror script. There's a lot to mine there. We got a lot of ghosts.
That is, I mean, because it's one of my favorite things about it is when you watch horror movies from around the world, like, there's almost nothing more intimate than what scares a person and what scares a culture, a people, a society, and as a roadmap to the anxieties of a nation and the horror it produces, and learning about them through that over, like, the passage of time.
Yeah.
To learn about a people that you don't know or haven't met or haven't been to, or perhaps only know from, like, more cliched or stereotypical ways of presentation, and then you get to see a lens into their anxieties and their fears.
Colonialism, ghosts,
and colonialism,
generational trauma. It's like the sky's the limit in the horror space for Pacific Islanders. That's the takeaway from today. I've never written horror, but now I kind of want to. I like a challenge.
Believe me, I've been sitting here sort of in the back of my mind wondering, being like, I wonder if she would write a horror movie. Like, if she knows all these people.
One of the things I'm most proud of about my career is that in not wanting to be pigeonholed, somebody told me really early on, like, when you get your first writing job, save your money. Like, don't change anything about your lifestyle, because one, you never know when you're going to get your second job. But two, if you do that, if you don't go out and buy a new car, I bought a couch. Okay. I'm still sitting on this couch 14 years later, but that will buy you the creative freedom you want to be able to not say yes to a show. Like, if what you don't want is to write a network procedural, then be smart about your money so that you can buy yourself the time to wait for the Lodge 49s of the world, or Narcos, or something like that. And I really took that advice to heart. Also, somebody didn't come from a ton of money. Like, I have money scarcity fears, so I was like
Yeah.
holding on tight.
You're like, that wasn't actually gonna be my particular problem, was just blowing it all at once. Like, my resource hoarding fear was too big for that.
Exactly. But what it allowed me to do is it allowed me to be patient and like be really purposeful in the choices I made. I mean, I was fortunate that I had choices along the way, but like every job I took, I was hoping to do something that I hadn't done before. You know, Narcos, I was really fortunate. That was my second job, but that was like at the beginning of streaming to get to write like a drama was really exciting. And then Designated Survivor, you know, political thriller. Also, I was like, I really want to have a kid, and 21 episodes of a TV show might make that financially possible.
Damn right, man.
It also allowed me to challenge myself to try new things. It's like so looking forward, I'm like, okay, well, I also never thought I'd direct an animated film. That's a new challenge. What's next? There's so much more I want to try because I think storytelling is so exciting to me. Character work and really pushing on why people do what they do and why they believe what they believe in different mediums is really fun. And I don't know, maybe horror, maybe, but Christmas rom-com horror from a Pacific lens.
Yeah. Dana, thank you so much for being on the show. And I really love this conversation. I love so many things that you've brought up. I am so just in awe of like what you have taken up as a mantle and been like, well, somebody needed to do it. And I didn't mean for it to be me, but like, and just, yeah, congratulations on the movie. And thank you so much for taking this time.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. This is a highlight of my day.
And truly, I will now be like living on bated breath to see like Pacific Islander horror movies being announced, being picked up, running through the pipeline at Sundance.
Maybe I'll start a pod. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just be like a Pacific horror pod.
Thank you again to Dana Ledoux Miller for their time and such an insightful conversation. I so enjoyed that. What a treat. And you can catch Moana 2 in a theater near you right now. And I'm going to say safely a couple weeks from now if you don't get to this immediately. And now that one quick thing before I go, I have very excitedly been part of the seasonal work team for the Sundance Institute, coming in the last part of this year and the beginning of next, aiding in the final push towards the film festival. And I have been working with teams to help get the film program into shape for public release. And guess what? The day before this episode dropped, the Sundance Film Festival 2025 film program was released. And I'm super excited, guys, not just because I'm a little cog in the machine, but because it's Sundance. I went once in 2015 and I've wanted to go back since then. I saw 27 movies in 9 days and I wanted to go back, but I didn't want to go back until I would be working the festival. And that is what I will do in 2025. I will be working at the festival. And if you make it to Sundance, or if you don't make it to Sundance physically, you can watch movies online for Sundance. They screen some of their films online. I'm going to tell you a few that I'm really excited about based on reading about it over and over and over again to get that program out and ready for the world. There is By Design, which is directed by Amanda Kramer and stars Juliette Lewis, who plays a woman that is taken for granted by everybody she knows and then turns into a chair. She is a woman who is walked on by others, and then she is turned on a chair, an object that is sat on by others. Juliette Lewis in a Sundance movie where she turns into a chair. That's a slam dunk for me. There's a movie called Twinless from director James Sweeney, and that co-stars Dylan O'Brien as a man who enters a bereavement group for those who have lost twins, who have lost a twin. And he makes a friend there and forges a deep bond with that person. And Dylan O'Brien's great. I want to see the friendship romance, I think, that becomes these two men meeting in sort of the saddest of circumstances, looking for companionship. There is also Sorry Baby, which is if you were just hanging on every thread of Eva Victor's front-facing camera videos when those were all the rage on social media, on Twitter. If you were a big fan of those, this is her directorial debut. She has a movie coming out, and now we can all watch it and enjoy it together. I could go on. There's obviously the whole Midnight section I'm going to be excited about, including one called Ugly Stepsister that actually was announced today, has been picked up by Shudder for distribution ahead of its midnight release at Sundance. And we love to hear any time about independent horror getting picked up and distributed out into the world. So yeah, that's my little spiel on that for the day, because I'm just so excited about the fest. I'm so excited about the new year in movies, which is what Sundance does. It kicks us off for a new year in cinema. And that's great news for everybody here in the Feeling Seen orbit. And that is our show. Again, thank you, Dana Ledoux Miller, Moana. Thank you, Sundance Independent Films. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Feeling Seen Pod, or send us an email at feelingseen@maximumfun.org. And guess what? You can also now find us on Blue Sky. So join us on Blue Sky. I've got my account over there. I am Jor Crew, if you want to follow me. Same on Twitter and Blue Sky, JORCRU. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. This show is produced by Danielle Huesias. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher. And this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported directly by you.